Okay everyone, this is just a light instructional video on how to put a new engine in a Nissan X Trail 2001 to 2007. I'm pretty sure this is the 2005. The early ones from 2000, or when they started, till about halfway through 2005, had a slightly different engine to the later ones up until 2007, before they completely revamped the whole thing. The only difference is, or the main difference is, the newer ones have an external oil cooler on the back of the engine. This one's a newer engine, so it's, I can't really see it down there, but it's, if you sort of look at the oil pressure switch right at the back over there, that's where it is. This car was a factory without that. It was the earlier model engine. Now the only difference between them is obviously that, and there's two extra coolant lines. This one here, and there's another one just there. So that one and that one are the only two extra lines. If you wanted to remove that setup, if you didn't like it, you just loop the two hoses over here. Just loop them over and leave the other end dry, or you could loop them over on both ends. It doesn't fucking matter, because that end's not connected to another coolant source. It gets its feed and draw from this side. Now this is an automatic car and this is a manual engine. Little bit of mucking around to get them to work together, but Nissan had this bright idea that they would use two different styles and two different heads of bolts for if you had a manual or an auto. So these ones over here, this is your manual flywheel bolt. It's a torque bolt. I think I used a T50 on it, but don't quote me on that. It's been on the ground over there for a little bit, and they run a dual mass flywheel. Now I'll take that with me. We head out here to the old engine. I ended up having to buy brand new bolts for it because they use an E socket, and they're an E socket E20 for anyone that wants to go and buy the tool. It's E20, and they look like this. You can try putting a normal socket on them, but really all that does is just destroys the end of the heads. Hence, this is what I did to these ones. So then I started getting the welder out. I started heating it up first, seeing if I could heat it up. Then I got the welder out, and all I was doing was fucking taking the corner off of the nut. So I put a big blob of weld on there and welded this nut to it. Welded this one to that to it. The best I got out was fucking 3 of them. But that's your automatic one, and that's your manual one. And this is the earlier engine, which does not have the oil cooler. So right here, instead of your oil pressure switch being bolted straight to there, there's a little triangle plate that's here, and then this steps out a little bit, and the two coolant lines run from here right through there. But yeah, doesn't matter if yours had it originally or doesn't have it, it's all the same. Okay, now when you get your engine, you have to take it out engine and box at the same time, right, with the frame, the K-frame underneath. When you go to unbolt it, to separate the engine, the gearbox and the K-frame, you actually have to unbolt the transfer case from the gearbox, because the transfer case sandwiches in on this plate here, which does not allow the gearbox to pass through that way. And so you've got to undo the transfer case first off the engine mount down here, which there'll be on the side of the transfer case. There's one that comes down here. You take that off, and then you can maneuver it out. Also undo your CV joint. That's for that CV joint there. This one here, this sensor here, to unplug that off the wiring harness, I used a flathead screwdriver and came in on this side because the clip is actually on the inside. Like the bit you got to push is on the inside. It's a stupid idea. I'm not a big fan of Nissan and sort of think every time they make a car they try and reinvent the wheel, and they do a terrible job at it. That's why they gave up on diesels. Go Toyotas. Fucking love Toyotas. But anyway, back to Nissan here. It's a stupid idea. Same with the bolts, a stupid idea, but it can be done. Take your time, relax. It's not as hard as everyone makes it out to be. These are quite simple to do. When you're putting your new engine in, I'd recommend doing a water pump because you've got fuck all room. To do your water pump on the engine, you actually have to unbolt this housing completely and take that off the engine. So you've got 2 bolts here and a couple bolts there, and you remove the whole water pump housing, because they did design this a stupid way. You got your 3 bolts for your water pump, 1, 2, 3, but your 3rd bolt hits this part of the bracket, because I tried to do it on the car like you can on pretty much most Toyotas, and yeah, Nissan just fucked up there. You do have to undo the dipstick as well to get that off, and the dipstick just pops in and out. You just give them a wiggle, oh, they just pop straight out. This one's just a bit stiff at the moment. The other one just pops straight out. They got like an O-ring that pushes into a little seal down there, and if you get them in the right spot, they'll lock in nice and tight. If you don't have them in the right spot, they'll sort of flop around. But don't be too stressed about that. You only worry about it if it's starting to leak. Okay, while it's also off, I'd recommend doing your 2 thermostats. You've got one here, and you've got one in here. You can sort of see the one in there if I get the camera on the right angle, see? Yeah. The reason this is off and that one's not is because when I was changing it and I put the new thermostat, new gasket on, it didn't look like it fit. So I had a look at this one and it was the same size. So I said, okay, well, it must fit. So put it back together. The fuel line disconnection, they got a special tool you use for that. I didn't end up using it. I ended up using a hacksaw and a blowtorch, and I heated it up with a blowtorch and just cut that off. And then I reused this hose here, which is your return line for your vapor, for your fuel. I used that, cut a slit in the old hose and made a little joiner, and I'm going to put 2 hose clamps, 1, 2 right there, and that'll hold. So that should sufficiently hold the pressure of fuel you've got coming through. Okay, I think that's everything from this engine I need to explain to you. So I'll just duck back over to the car. Alright, so back to the car now. When you drop it out, don't worry about going through here and disconnecting all of this. You've got a small harness here, which only has the 1 ground there, your main power for your alternator, your L positive and B positive battery wires for that, and your fucking aircon. You undo that, fold that over that side. You take the glove box apart. Alright. Take the glove box apart. And you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then that's number 7. You've got 7 things to undo. This little ground, these 2 here, these 3, and that one. And then they feed back through the hole at the back there. Feed them through one at a time because they will not all fit through at once, okay? Don't be a dickhead and try and fucking pull on them. I wasn't a dickhead. I've done many cars before. But yeah, just don't be a dickhead and fucking pull them all through and pull your plugs out. And then go, oh, I pulled my plugs out. Fucking do it right the first time. This is all power steering fluid on the floor. I had a little bit of an accident before. Now, in here, this is about the only thing I'll give Nissan credit for. I've done many Toyotas in my time, and I think Toyota's got a shit setup for this. But this is your main steering arm, right? Now it goes up the top here, and there's a little bolt. Where is he? Should be on the ground here somewhere. Oh, I can't really see him. He's down here somewhere, but he just goes through this shaft up here. Where my finger is. See this? The bolt, that just slides into that shaft. Now, on a Toyota, the process is pretty much the same as on a RAV4. But a RAV4, you don't have to take the transfer case off to separate the thing. The gearbox and transfer case can come off as one on a RAV4, whereas they can't on a X Trail. Now RAV4s, you have to undo them from the knuckle down here, and they've got a sliding yoke. So this, like a tail shaft, will slide in to the shaft up here. Whereas in these ones, you just undo it up from up there and you drop it as a half shaft. And I think that is a good idea Toyota should have done. But I still would rather have a Toyota any day over a Nissan. Just a lot less head fucks. But that was the easiest part of the job, was undoing the steering. You will have to undo your power steering. Down in here. I'm not going to be able to get the camera into it, but you've got this line here and this line here. And yeah, one goes to the pump. Just undo the one that slides on the pump. Don't undo the banjo bolt one. You don't need to until the engine's on the ground. Okay? To remove it from the car, just undo the one with the hose clamp on it. So there'll be one with a hose clamp on the steering rack, and then one with the hose clamp on the pump. They're the only two you need to undo when removing it from the car. Once it's on the ground and you want to separate it from the frame, that's when you undo the banjo bolt. And you undo it from the pump. That way the pump and frame will stay together and you just, yeah. After that, yeah, to get it out of the car, obviously to undo your frame, you've got, this is your center support rail, or your cross member for the middle of your engine. You got 2 bolts here and 4 back there, plus your 1 engine mount bolt there. You undo that fella, take him out with the engine crane or something on the engine just to take the weight. Then undo these 2, and then go back there and undo those 4. And then this just drops down and pulls out. And it's gone, it's out of the way. Never to be heard from again. Then you undo the 2 bolts on the bottom of your strut, and then there's 1 bolt right there, 1 nut there. You undo him, and then you got 3 bolts on a plate that side and 3 bolts on a plate that side, and you do the same to this one. Undo that. You unplug your ABS, which is that wire that runs up there, and feed him back through, and just undo your brake line from your caliper. You don't need to take your caliper off. Leave all that connected, your CV joint, everything, just leave it all connected. Don't need it off to get it in or out of the car. Just unplug your ABS from the car side, not the caliper side. Because it's much easier to undo that electrical plug than it is to pull that sensor out. You'll end up breaking the sensor. So yeah, brake line, sensor, and then your strut bolts, and obviously then your rear support, that one there. Now, you need this thing up in the air, the whole car up in the air. That's a Captiva engine to go in another car. So what I ended up using was just an old Toyota Camry wheel I had lying around with an old Ford Courier brake drum, and then a jack stand at full extension. And then I had them on the structural chassis part of the car. Like, these are a unibody chassis, but they had a structural beam through the center. I had that as far forward on that as I could, which gave me enough room to lay underneath while I was undoing all this. And it also gave the car enough height that when I lowered the engine and gearbox down, because everything's got to come down, when I lowered it down, it gave me enough clearance to drive it out. Because all this swap was done with a forklift. I do not recommend anyone that has a engine crane to do it. You're gonna be in for a world of hurt. An engine crane can quite happily put it up on those stands, but an engine crane will not get the engine out of the car. Will not. You have an engine crane, you're in for a world of hurt. All right. There is 2 engine mounts inside the car you do have to undo, but you save them till last when you got the forklift or something underneath to lower it down. So you got 1, 2, 3 bolts to undo here, just this side. Do not touch that side. And then you have 1, 2, 3, 4 to undo there. Don't worry about undoing that pin bolt there. It's not needed to be undone. Okay. Now, on to when you've got the engine out of the car. All right. This engine mount here, in particular, always breaks. Check it out thoroughly. Now, when you buy it, it's not going to have this plate in it. It's just going to be that mount. I thought, when I was looking for it, they came as a single unit. No, that part is not listed with that. You can't buy it. You can't buy this piece. Not unless you go straight to Nissan. They don't have a listing for it at your general parts stores, and they won't sell it. This part they do. So what you do is you take your old one of this with your new one of this to an engineering shop, and they've got what they'll do is they'll pretty much use a press, and they'll press the pin out, because it's got a pin that goes all the way through, no bolt. They'll press the pin out and then they'll press it into the new one, because it's a press fitting. It's a great idea on how to do it, but it's a shit idea it doesn't come pre-assembled. That's something Nissan needs to fucking work out. They need to have this stuff pre-assembled, because that's a pain in the ass. It makes this engine mount was like $150 or so, $150, $160 for that. And then I still had to pay another $100 to get that pressed into there. Why? Why couldn't you make it even just a fucking bolt to go through there? You know, they didn't really think things through. All right. And then, yeah, when the engine's on the ground, it's pretty good. Okay, now it will come to wiring harness bits you need to unplug from the main harness to get the engine out of the car. Every plug down here, every single one of them. The little blue one there is the ABS. That pops out through the wheel arch here, see? That's the ABS. So you've got a blue one on that side too to undo. But yeah, these 3 here, you've got to undo your positive terminal and your negative terminal. Your negative terminal stays with the engine. You've just got the one screw there, and then it just sits on top of the engine. And then your positive one, you split them in half. Now, this top half here stays with the car. This bottom half here goes with the engine. And this here stays with the car. I'm not sure what that is. It's a little fucking fuse for something or other. It's factory, but I'm just not sure what it does. Not my car, not my problem. So you undo all that and then fold this over on top of there. And you will have to undo, there is 5 screws under this battery. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay? They have to come out because you don't have quite enough room. So you've got to be able to maneuver the battery box around, and it's a pain in the ass to do it, but it can be done. Just take your time, relax. If you get frustrated, move on to something else. So like when I was doing this, I rebuilt my outboard on my boat, which is not here. And then I also rebuilt another outboard outside. I got a couple of Yamaha outboards and I rebuilt them just in while I was waiting for myself to calm down over doing this, because some things got to me about how much harder Nissan made it, but in the end we all got there. Now, I wouldn't bother trying to save your aircon gas if you've got aircon. Just let the gas out and put fresh gas in it, because you will have to undo these 2 bolts here and take your aircon lines off. This one, I just folded him over the guard, and this one here, I tucked him into here, so he stayed out of the way. So I didn't break the aircon lines. All I did was move them out of the way so I didn't break them. When you're changing this mount, there's 3 bolts. There's 1, 2, and a third one. To get to the third one, you have to undo the little 10mm bolt straight down there, which holds your coolant reservoir in. You pull him out sideways and you can throw him over the guard, or I don't care where you throw him, but you can get to that third bolt in there to get that mount out of the car. Other than that, I'm pretty sure I've covered everything I can. Oh, this is that little thing I was just telling you about. So this line here has usually got a rubber cover over top of it, because it's rubber over hard plastic. I've just, cut a bit of this hose off the other car and made this little joiner, and I'm going to put a hose clamp here and a hose clamp there. I've already test started the car like this and it works fine, but I know the electronic fuel pump on and off all the time, it'll eventually squirt that hose out of there. So if I put a clamp here to hold it to that, and a clamp there to hold it to that, she's all sweet. She'll be real Flash Gordon. But anyway, that's, you do have to undo the airbox. The airbox is just clipped in, so you just got your hose clamp there, and I think there's like 1 bolt, but yeah, it just pops in and out. Nothing elaborate, not elaborate like we've been talking about. If any of you have any questions about it, about what I encountered that I haven't covered on this and how I've gotten around it, feel free to send me a message on YouTube. I'm not sure how that shit all works, but I'm sure I'll figure it out. But yeah, or write a comment or something and I can always get back to you in the comment section. But I don't usually make videos. This is one of my first videos I think of actually talking in it. But I just figured, I was watching the YouTube, because when I went into it, I've done quite a few RAV4s over the years. Love me Toyotas, but I done a few of them, and I sort of figured, I had an idea on exactly how I was going to do it, because they're all very similar design. All these all-wheel drive in the east-west engine like orientation, they're all pretty much the same underneath. You just got a couple of bolts to hold your K-frame in place, your center cross member, and then your wiring harness. They're simple. They're all simple. It's just how many sensors you got to unplug and what silly ideas the workshop had to come up with. Like, take a Suzuki Swift. I've done a couple of them before, right? A Suzuki Swift, if you wanted to change the gearbox in it, just the gearbox alone, you only need to unbolt, right? If this was a Swift, pretend this is a Swift. You only need to unbolt the suspension from the left-hand side, take the center cross member out so you can drop the engine down, undo this mount here so you can drop it down, undo the gearbox all the way around, give it a jiggle, and it will come out through the wheel arch. No joke, it fits through the wheel arch. It's the same with a Honda. A Honda will fit through the wheel arch. Camrys, they'll lift out from on top. They're fucking unreal. A 4-cylinder Camry, one of the early I think they're S20s, or S10s, S20s, I think. They will lift out through the top. Because I've done a couple of engine swaps in them where I've just lifted them out from the top, because they just got so much fucking room. They were massive engine bay for a front-wheel drive car. They were unreal. I've never encountered a car like them in front-wheel drive layout. There's just so much room. Toyota done a bang-up job on that. But yeah, Suzuki Swifts, same with all very little, like small Suzukis, like your Inguses and all that sort of stuff, or your Altos, they're all the same. Fucking, you can pull it out through the wheel arch. All right. As again, yeah, just flick me a comment if you'd like to know more. But I just saw so many people saying, "Do not attempt to do an engine swap on this car. It's so hard." And I'm thinking to myself, who the fuck are these people? I'm quite happy to help someone out where due course, but yeah, this is the way to do it. It's easy. You'll have less headaches, and at least you've got someone that's going to tell you how to do it, rather than someone. There's one video online, the guy was just whinging and complaining for half an hour, and I watched his video and I was like, you sound like you've got no idea on how to do a car. So yeah, I used a basic toolkit, this Sid Chrome basic toolkit, I think it's 115 piece. That's all I used. That plus that forklift. And I did use that engine crane to lift it up, but then I used the forklift to lower it down. And then when I put it back on the ground, I used the forklift for everything. The reason I used the engine crane to lift it up is because I wanted to be nice and gentle. I didn't want to damage anything underneath when I was going up the first time. But yeah, I could have used the forklift for the whole lot, but I wanted to be gentle. Now, mounting points, I did forget this, okay. When you're lifting out the engine, okay, I used a homemade sling. Now, my homemade sling, I'll show you it in a second. I used this bolt hole here with it's a metric 8 by 125 thread, just a standard M8 bolt. And I used this nut because my engine mount broke. When I was going down the first time, I used this bolt here. But when I was lifting the engine back up into the car, I used that. Or when I was maneuvering it around, I used that. But when I went down, I used the alternator one because that was the only thing I could get a hold of. That was sturdy. Now my homemade sling, well, I remember, to be honest, I don't even know where I've put it. Fucking bench is loaded full of turbos and all sorts of crap from many cars I've been working on. Tractor fucking starter motor. Here it is. This is my homemade sling. That is all I needed. This is an old seat belt out of a Toyota Land Cruiser. You can use the seat belt out of any car. Seat belt's rated to 300 kilos of lifting weight. 250 of pulling, but 300 of lifting. And this is a door hinge off of an 80 series cruiser, off a barn door one. So I just put a D-shackle in there, and then I put a bolt, the M8 bolt, I think I used that hole there on that back side. So that was on that side of the car, the left-hand side. And then for the driver's side, that just went straight over that, where that nut was, and I just screwed the nut down. Or when I lifted it out the first time, it was, yeah. When you only needed this sling, because once you get it on the ground and you want to undo the gearbox, you've got to it's easier to suspend it in the air. Okay? It's easier to suspend it. So I had it up on the sling because that was there and that was down there. I had the fork tines through that, suspending it up about probably this high off the ground while I was undoing everything, and then I tried to catch it. It's a very heavy gearbox too. Fucking, I struggled to lift it. And I can lift a whole RAV4 gearbox and transfer case as one unit in a manual or an auto, but I cannot lift that auto box on my own without the transfer case. It is fucking heavy. Fucking big gearbox. Such a little car. I don't know how strong it is, but it's a fucking big gearbox. But anyway, if I keep talking, I'll keep finding more things to say. And I may as well just let you guys watch my video and get back to me, however you want to get back to me, and I'll try and help as many people as I can with this. And I will do a video on a 2010 Captiva 2.4 litre petrol. Try and make it easier for many of the other people out in this world. All right, thanks for your time, and I hope this helps.